Hi everybody. So today I'm going to tell you how I got diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos syndrome. A long time ago on a show called True Life on MTV, I saw a girl who had Ehlers Danlos. She was a contortionist and it was really difficult for her to get diagnosed, but she got the qualifications, the paperwork, and got diagnosed. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, wow, that's crazy, this super rare disease. And then fast forward to years later, I mean, a decade or more, and I was watching court TV because I'm an old person. And there was this case where the lady's baby was having issues. He was breaking bones easily, he was bruising easily, he had hypermobility, he had all these issues that sounded very familiar to me. And then when she said the condition, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I'm like, that sounds really familiar. And so I looked it up, and when I found it, I went down the list of symptoms, and it was just this awakening moment where I was just ticking them off one by one. I have that, I have that, I have that. Down the list. There was only like 3 things on this list of symptoms that I didn't have. And I was like, oh my gosh, 100% I have this. And it was one of those moments where, especially as a female, because we're gaslighted all the time, it was one of those moments where it was like, am I being a hypochondriac? Like, am I one of those people that goes on Mayo Clinic and is like, oh my god, I'm dying of cancer? And so I just kind of disregarded it a little bit. I was like, I'll keep this in the back of my mind, but like, I'll let doctors do their jobs. And this was, during a time when I still trusted doctors. So, again, fast forward probably a year, maybe, and I had gotten the imaging done on my spine and found that I had tarlov cysts and started seeing my neurosurgeon, and he is the one that suggested to me that it might be an underlying cause. And I had seen another doctor before this who mentioned it might be an autoimmune disease like lupus or something like that, and she sent me out for testing. Everything came back negative. So when this doctor suggested that it might be an autoimmune or a similar disorder, I was like, oh yeah, we've got testing for that. And he was like, well, has anybody ever asked you if you have Marfan's or Ehlers-Danlos? And I was like, actually, I think I have Ehlers-Danlos. And he's like, what makes you think that? And so I told him, about what happened. And I was like, I just down the line, I have those symptoms. And he's like, okay. So he kind of ran me through a rudimentary gamut of symptoms and of the physical exam. He did the Beighton test, which, if you're familiar with Ehlers-Danlos, you know what the Beighton score is. But basically, for anybody who doesn't know, it's kind of a physical hypermobility test that you have to go through. So they, test, can you touch the floor without, put your hands flat on the floor without bending your knees? Can you touch your thumb to your wrist? Can you do all these super flexible things? And if you get a high enough score on that test, if you can do all of those things, then it's pretty much like you have this. There are other qualifications that you have to pass in order to get diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, but he ran me through the physical part, the Beighton score, and was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you have it, but I'm not allowed to diagnose it. I'm not that kind of doctor. But like, I'm sure that you have this, so you need to find a doctor who can diagnose you, and that's going to make life easier. And that's when I started my journey of getting diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos. So I had to find a rheumatologist, and that became super difficult for some reason. I don't know if it was just my insurance or what, I don't know, but it became like this super big hassle. I was tired of being bounced around from doctor to doctor, and at the time I still didn't have a primary physician. I just was kind of seeing whoever was available, and I was like, okay, enough is enough. I started seeing someone regularly. I really liked her. I trusted her, and I think that it made a huge difference that she was female. And I know that that sounds really sexist, but I just feel that females understand females, and you get treated differently when you see a female physician. They don't tend to treat other female patients like we're crazy or that it's hormonal. They listen more. So I wasn't being gaslighted, and it felt nice. So I went in one day and I said, listen, I need you to hear me and not think that I'm crazy, because something is wrong and I need you to help me figure out what it is. And she was like, okay. And I said, I'm afraid that people are not going to take me seriously, and that doctors aren't going to figure out what is wrong with me until I'm dead. And I know that that sounds crazy, and I know that that sounds like exaggeration, but something is going on in my body and I'm scared. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna help you. Oh my gosh, it was such a huge relief. So she sent out a bunch of testing and, helped me find a rheumatologist, and was instrumental in getting a lot of my diagnoses, but also my Ehlers Danlos diagnosis. And it sounds crazy, but like, if you knew everything that was happening to me at that time, then you would understand why I said those things to her. But especially because at the time I was having a lot of heart issues, and when it comes to your heart, it's like really scary because that could potentially kill you. And I was having all these different pains, and I was dealing with the endometriosis at the time and the ovarian cysts, and I just knew there was an underlying cause, and I was convinced that it was Ehlers Danlos, but like, I didn't know for sure, and it was scary. I was in a lot of pain. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't have any answers, and I needed her help. So I was very thankful that she helped me find someone. She referred me to a rheumatologist 4 hours away from me. I drove all the way out there and saw him, and he was like, yeah, you probably have it, but I can't diagnose you with it because you need to get genetic testing, and I don't do that here. So it was way too true. So then I saw another rheumatologist, and he was like, absolutely not. You don't have Ehlers Danlos. I have had other patients with Ehlers Danlos, and they're like way worse shape than you. So you don't have this. And I was like, okay, well, like, I don't agree with that, because in the research that I've done, I know that there are varying degrees, there are different types, and I'm young, so all of the patients he was talking about were in their 60s and 70s, and I was like, it's really unfair for you to make that judgment, and he was just a dick, honestly. So I was like, listen, just put the testing out there so I can get it done and know for sure. And he's like, sure. So he put the testing out, and my insurance rejected it. So I got referred to another rheumatologist. And at this point, I'm just kind of dragging. I'm like, ugh, I don't want to go through all this, and I just want to be done with this, and I just want answers, I want treatment, I want help. And I drove 3 hours to see this woman, and she was like, okay, why are you here? And I told her, yeah, at the time I wasn't being referred to her for the Ehlers Danlos, but it was something that my primary care physician was like, we're gonna get this looked at by her at the same time. But I was having finger issues, and so I went there and I told her, I was like, I'm here for finger issues, and she's like, your paperwork said that you have Ehlers Danlos, and I was like, well, I haven't been diagnosed with that. I've seen a bunch of doctors, I've got a bunch of testing, everybody says I have it, but like I haven't officially been diagnosed. And she was like, oh, well, I'm gonna help you with that. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, we're gonna do it right now. So she got the paperwork and we did all of it, and I passed. And she was like, okay, Crystal, I'm gonna submit this, and you're gonna have official documentation. You are diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos syndrome type 3 hypermobility type. And I was so stunned that I almost couldn't react. Like, I wanted to cry, I wanted to laugh, I wanted to hug her. It felt surreal. Like, this is not happening. I can't believe I finally have this official diagnosis. And I really didn't believe it. Like, she, then followed by looking at my fingers and diagnosing me with the trigger finger, separate video. And I went home and I told my family, and they were like, oh my God, are you serious? I was like, yeah, I think so. They're like, oh my God, that's incredible. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna believe it until I see the paperwork, because at this point I have learned not to trust doctors and to get my own reports. And so even though I really loved her, I was like, I'm not gonna believe it till I see it. And then I got an email that my reports were available, and I got on there and I opened it up, and there it was. And it was like this moment of change in my life. It was crazy. And even though there is no cure for Ehlers Danlos and there's very little treatment, it has just created so much understanding in my life. When I go to see a medical professional now, and I can tell them with definitive proof that I have Ehlers Danlos, yeah, most of the time they don't know what that is, but it forces them to look it up. It forces them to learn real quick. And if they do know what it is, they know that I need to be treated differently. And so it just creates this universal understanding across the board with all of the doctors and physicians and specialists I see, that I have to be treated differently. The treatment plan needs to be adjusted to fit me. And it has changed everything. So I got this diagnosis in April of 2020, and my life has been changed dramatically since then, and it's only been a little over a year. So if you think that you might have Ehlers Danlos, definitely see somebody, and do not give up on your journey. Keep seeing people, keep getting testing, and do not give up, because it is very difficult to get diagnosed, and especially as a female, because the parameters for Ehlers Danlos were created for men. everything in the medical field, unless it's specifically women, so gynecological, everything is created on the parameters of the male species because they are taught to factor in our hormones, our emotional issues, etc. So they can never trust the data if they test on women. It's something that needs to change, but because of this, the parameters for Ehlers Danlos are based on men, so it is extremely difficult for women to get diagnosed. And it's crazy because most people who are diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos are female. It's close to the 50% mark, I remember. So why aren't the parameters being changed? Anyways, don't give up. Persevere. I got my diagnosis, and luckily it didn't take me decades and decades. It took me 3 years. So, not horrible. And like I said, it changed everything for me. So, yeah, definitely do your research. And if you want to learn more information about Ehlers Danlos, I highly suggest that you look it up online. I'll include some links down in the description for you. So, yeah, that's my story of getting diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll see you guys next time.